Chapter 8 Lubricators. Hydrostatic lubricator, obstructed feed nozzle, obstructed head and choke plug at the steam chest, setting the current rate of lubrication after standing long periods. Mechanical lubricator, automatic lubricator for the type B on the air cylinder of the Westing pump. Description, operation, and testing. Alright, lubricators. Hydrostatic lubricator is fitted with the PB15 locomotive is operational and stand described below in figure 5. The annex is Annex A. When steel supply valve from the boiler and steam valve with lubricator are open, steam enters the lubricator, flows through the equalizing tubes and pipes through the steam chest and the air compressor. At the end of equalizing tubes, it allows the flow to the site feed chambers, where it condenses, filling the site feed chambers with water. When the steam valve on the lubricator is opened further, the boiler steam enters the condensing chamber and condenses into water. Upon opening the water valve, the water from the condensing chamber travels down the passage, passes the return ball check valve into the bottom of the oil chamber and fills the space not occupied by oil. Because the lower specific gravity and the oil flats on the water are maintained with central passage past the control valve with the regulating valve passage open upon the regulating valve, the oil, due to its own buoyancy, rises, dropping down drop by drop through the water inside of the feed glass of the equalizing passage where it is caught to be a jet stream cleared by the steam pipes that pass the choke valves in the state of emission into the valves in the piston and Westing pump. 811 Obstructed feed nozzle. If the feed nozzle is obstructed, the vent plug of the nozzle site feed chamber is opened and closed quickly. If the oil does not start to flow, the vent port is open and wide and all water drain. The escaping steam reduces the pressure from the feed valve chambers, increases the hydrostatic pressure. The method fails regulating valve with the water valve that closed, then the steam valve with the condensing chamber is gradually throttled to the point where the boiler pressure can be found with the oil reserve because of the sufficient force obstruction of opening and closing the regulation valve. If the lubricator is under the pressure, will often accept this the removal of any obstruction. When other methods fail, the following should be carried out. Place the oil and control valve in the closed position. Do not alter the other feed valves or close the steam of the water valve. Remove the century piece of the block feed valve. Replace the ball check valve and insert the wire with the feed nozzle, which allows the steam pressure and site feed with the chamber to force with the obstruction and cut out. Report the century pieces then reopen the oil control valve and reset the affected feed valve. 812 Obstruction in the choke plug at the steam chest. Should the choke plug in the steam chest become blocked, no oil will pass to the steam chest. The steam in the delivery pipe will condense and the pipe will be filled with water. This may be detected by feeding the feed pipe on the boiler side of the choke nipple, which will be cold if the choke is obstructed. To remedy the trouble, the feed pipe is uncoupled with the steam chest nipple and the choke plug is removed and cleaned. Steam from the lubricator is blown through the feed pipe and the regulator is opened and the steam blown from the steam chest. This cleans both the delivery pipe and the choke plug. 813 Setting of the correct rate of lubrication. Oil should be made used carefully and with wastage avoided. It must be certain that the hydrostatic lubricator has sufficient oil for the high task of the high site feeds all are clean and working correctly. 1 or 2 drops of oil per minute are sufficient to single stage Westing pumps. 3 drops per minute are sufficient to cylinder lubrications. Oil control valve is turned to the brake pump and only setting when stopped at any length of the time as to avoid unnecessary feeding oil stationary valve pistons. 8.1 refer to section 3.7 for the filling lubricators. 8.4 After standing for long periods and standing for any length of time, always remember that to return the control valve to all on before moving the locomotive. Drivers are to place a red cloth or some other reminder that the regulator handle is to remind themselves to check the control valve is located on all before moving. All on is with the control valve point down. Alright, mechanical lubricator. The mechanical lubricator is applied with the Kilray and is in the oil reserve and activated with the crank and attached with the combination lever inside the oil reserve and the plungers connected with the pipes and cylinders, valve chest. The engine must not be allowed to run without the oil registering in the gauge. Under the circumstances, drivers must not allow the lubricant to be filled out of the sight in the glass or the overflow. Lubricator must always be cleaned thoroughly around with the filling plug before removing it, so as to prevent any of the foreign matter from getting into the lubricator. Alright, 8.3 automatic lubricator with a type B on the air cylinder of the Wessing pump. Description: the lubricator is an oil chamber having a cap not on the top of the filling purposes. The cap nut is provided with the vent holes located so that they are, when the seal between the cap and the body is broken, with the air pressure is vented to the atmosphere, thus allowing the oil chambers to be filled with the pump while pumping is operation. Inside the body lubricator is a hollow central seam connected to the bottom of the pipe leading to the end of the air cylinder. The other end of the central passage has a side outside inside lubricator to permit chamber to be filled without possibility of pouring oil directly into the center passage. The oil part located with the seam and connects with the central passage with the anal cavity and the steams over which there's neat fitting sleeve. Alright, 832 operation. When the piston makes an upward stroke and air is forced with the cylinder of the piston, if the passes through the pipe and central passage out of the side of the outlet with the space above the oil in the chamber, the pressure and the air force of the oil through the notches between the sleeve and the stem of the oil rises due to the capillary action. It then passes through the oil port of the stem to the central passage. On the downstroke, the piston and the oil carried from the flow of the air are regularly sufficient to lubricate the air cylinder. 833 testing. The pump is shut off and the filling cap removed with the pump restarted at the noting of the air is passing through the outside of the opening, thus indicating the central passage is clear. A finger is held tightly over the side outlet. Air should then find its way through the bottom of the port to the central passage into the sleeve between the outside of the stem and sleeve, thus escaping the direction. Air bubbles will rise through the oil, thus indicating lubrication and function correctly. The passengers are not free. They must be cleared booked for attention. Chapter 9: Engine failures and defects.